Hey folks, so modern AI agents and models are super powerful, but I think our agentic workflows could use some structure and guidance. So let's take a look at a real world AI powered development workflow with Spec-Kit and Una platform. Let's get into it. All right. So before I actually get in, let me start with the why here. In computer science, there is an old saying, garbage in, garbage out. And this is particularly true in this age of AI. We have very powerful AI agents that can generate a lot of code and do things for us. But unless we put up the work up front, we cannot expect good results. This is true when we are trying to build an app feature or maybe a full app, or we are trying to generate a lot of code that meets a certain functionality. We need to be able to generate a lot of specifications up front that says, here's exactly what we want in our app or this feature. Here's how we want our code to be structured, and here's how we want our code to be validated with UI tests. Unless we do all of this work, we cannot expect good results. And we all know the saying, like, we cannot vibe code our way into a professional enterprise scale apps. So we need some structure. And one of the best ways in which we can provide this structure is this thing called Spec-Kit. So I'm literally on the GitHub page here for Spec-Kit. Do a search and you can land here. So what this is an open source toolkit that allows us to focus on the actual product that we're trying to build and specify a lot of things up front so we have more predictable outcomes, right? So I'm going to read from them. Essentially flips the script on traditional software development because for the longest time, we just want to start writing code, right? We want to look at some specs, which are some, PRDs, requirements documents, or something that, the product PM has written up. And we want to just really quickly get to the real work of coding. And then we throw away the specs. But that shouldn't be the case. This one here says, no, your specifications are the reality of what you're building. Those specifications will become executable. So that's what this is. And this is core, the audience here is the AI agent. So Spec-Kit asks you to specify all the things so that AI agents have an easier way to understand what is it that you're wanting to get built and how, and the structure of all of that, and how do I test all of that. So start here, and it's really nice to understand how they have set up the flow and how you can get started. So it's a command line toolkit. There is a Python package manager UV, so you can install this with UV or just do a UVX if you just want to do it one time, and off and running you go. So let me pull up a terminal here, and if I just do specify, you can see it runs command line, and it's waiting to see, hey, what can I help you with? So at this point, you could say, hey, I want you to start building a project which does X, whatever is your app feature or the thing that you're wanting to get built. And then it kind of steps you through to define all the things that you want to get built. So what did I do with all of this? Well, last week, I was at a conference. This is a set of conferences called NDC conferences, Norwegian Developer Conferences. They do shows worldwide, very popular in Europe. They just did one in North America. This was in Toronto, in Canada. So I was there with a bunch of other folks, lots of speakers, lots of great sessions and workshops. And this was the website, essentially, that walked you through everything that the conference offered. And they had, a nice, application that ran on your mobile. But I wanted to see if I could write up solid specs and be able to do this entirely on my own. So what did I do? Well, I went to the thing that I like doing the most, and that is cross-platform .NET development. And my chosen stack is Una platform, because from a single shared code base of C# and XAML, I get to write an app that just runs everywhere. So everything that I'm doing here is on this foundational open source stack. This is Una platform. So again, I get to have an app that runs on iOS and Android primarily, because I want to be mobile first, but I also want to be able to run this on the web with WebAssembly or desktop targets like Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. So that's where I started. But on top of this foundational thing, I do have Platform Studio, which gives me a bunch of AI and design tools that I want to use to validate the UI that I'm trying to build. So that's my stack. And the nice thing here is we want to work with any type of agentic workflows. workflows, if I go look at the docs, the getting started guides, you can see like we are pretty agnostic. So any AI agent, any ID of your choice. And it works particularly well with something like Spec-Kit because we now have a way to test all the things. The way we do that is if I look at MCPs, this is Model Context Protocol. Essentially, we want to make sure the AI agents are always grounded in our docs. So we have ways for the AI agent to initialize themselves, to be able to do documentation search, do a lot of fetch, summarize, so you never have to leave the IDE. And then we have App MCP, which is essentially Playwright for .NET apps. So we want to be able to take a screenshot, be able to click on your app, type in some text, press a button. So all the interactive features that you want tested in your app, we got you covered with these two. So with these two MCPs, any AI agent should be able to not just be grounded in what they generate, but also be able to test your app. So I went to work. So let's see where we started. So this is, again, if you're just starting out with Spec-Kit, there are some nice, articles on, the what and the how. But this is where it essentially starts. Like you have to specify exactly what you want to build. Then you have to plan. So AI agents can do things a little bit parallelly if need be, particularly if it's a big feature. They break it down into tasks, and then you go and implement. So I actually have, I took a screenshot of exactly how I did this, so I can walk you through. So essentially, I started with Spec-Kit and said, hey, I want you to build a conference app, and I want to use Claude in this case. And it's just doing a bunch of checks to say, yes, I can work with GitHub Copilot or Codex or other agentic workflows, but I chose Claude here. And then it's saying, hey, once you're up and running, these are the things I can do for you. And this is kind of key for you to define those things up front. And there are a couple of key things in here. First up is constitution, exactly what it sounds like. This is kind of your guiding principle for, maybe at a global level, this is what you always want to uphold, right? Project principles. So any type of, really overarching principles that you want to have, like you want to have accessibility, you want it to be a cross-platform app, you should specify all of that up front. Then your specify is the baseline specification. This tells you that, hey, I want to build a conference app that has these features. So all of your features are essentially broken down into user stories. If you had worked with like a PM or a product owner, they will feel right at home because that's exactly what they do. And then we get into plan. So look at all the specs. And from here, how do we actually translate that into real code? That's where we create an implementation plan for these user stories. This is the screen that we need to build, and we spell it all out. Then we get into tasks, which is where, let's break down the tasks. So this is the kind of structure that AI agents need, because then they can actually get to work in a very structured way. They know a list of things that they need to do, and then they go and implement. So that's the last stage, right? So you can do more things like clarify or analyze just to make sure you have a clean slate, but that's how you get going and you get started. So what did I build? Because I wanted to have an app for NDC Toronto, which is a conference that I was on, and I wanted to do that with Una platform. So I got to work, and here is, let's actually pull up VS Code. Here's where I built, or what I built and how. So I want you to kind of walk this through with me. I'm not going to actually generate code because that takes a little bit of time, but this was my flow. So essentially, let me pull up my AI chat so you can kind of see where I started. So this is where I started to say, hey, I want you to write me a Spec-Kit constitution. So these essentially all become skills, right? So these are things you can, invoke. So these are kind of like sub-agents with some scripts in them and templates in them. So Spec-Kit can do things for you. So I'm just saying, hey, in my constitution, I want you to have three things, right? I want you to make this a cross-platform app, .NET app with Una platform. I want you to leverage docs MCPs, so the AI agents are never guessing. They're always grounded in docs. And I want you to use our app MCP so I can validate UI functionality. So those are my three core principles. And it went to work, and it said, hey, by the way, I created you this constitution, and I'm going to write a little bit more. Just to be nice, these are your 5 principles. This is your tech stack. This is your development workflow. Here's your governance, all of that. Again, very PM language of defining what the constitution is. And then I got to work to say specify, right? So here's where I'm trying to specify what exactly I'm wanting to have built, and it's looking up Git and doing some scripting here, and it's saying, hey, I'm saying I want you to build this conference app. This is what I'm after. And it looks up the URL, tries to get a sense of what exactly I'm trying to build, takes a first pass. And all of this is just, in Markdown. So you can edit this all you want. So it took a first pass trying to understand. And I tried to clarify that, hey, I really need you to show me a list of sessions. I want you to be able to, for any attendee to be able to go see the sessions, the workshops, and the speaker details. I want them to be able to build a personalized my schedule. So I can look at a session, add that, and then once I'm in my schedule, I should be able to rate it, each session once I've, sat in it, and also show me some, sponsor and venue information if you could. So it took care of all of that, and then that became my specification. And then the next step was, let's plan, like, how are we actually going to build this thing, right? So again, none of this is super fast, but this is where you're putting in the work up front. It's making you think through exactly what you want to build. So it sits there and does the whole plan. And you can see, like, while it's doing a plan, even, it's doing so with the help of MCP tools. Like, it's doing documentation search and fetch to make sure that the technical aspect, so the specification is non-technical. That's just what you want built. The plan is technical, because here's where you specify exactly the architecture that you need, how you're going to do data persistence, how are you going to show things in a view, all of that, right? So it does all of this and says, hey, this is your plan. Here's my research. Here's my data model, my contracts, everything is set. And now I can do tasks, which is where, excuse me, I am essentially going to break this down to say, here are the features I want built. Now, here's how I'm going to chunk it up and then actually go build. And then the final step is implement, where it actually goes off and does things, right? So with all of this, here's the solution that I have. Essentially, everything is in one folder, so you can see what it did. So here is specify. And this is essentially the command line tool. If I look into my memory here, there's a constitution.markdown file. This is, again, is the definition of what Spec-Kit is trying to do. This is, the guiding principles, that it always has to be cross-platform. It's document-driven development. So again, grounded by the MCPs. It's UI validation. It needs to be responsive, accessible design, all of that. So these are my guiding principles. Based on that, these are my specs. So again, let's kind of walk through exactly what it did. So here's the research that it did. How to exactly build it, what does cross-platform mean, what type of design patterns we should follow. So it's considering alternatives and giving me stuff. This is the spec. So essentially, here's what it does. It takes a look at one prompt, and it tries to say, based on that, instead of you vibe coding and the AI agent stopping you every step of the way, why don't we define user stories? Why don't we define features? So first user story is browse conference schedule, right? That's the first priority. Be able to add sessions to our schedule, be able to view speaker details, be able to rate, search, and view workshop details, eventually rate sessions, with stars, view partner and venue information. So everything that I just spelled out, it's put it all down. And this is, yes, it's lengthy, but this is exactly what the AI agents love to consume, because this is very detailed. And this is all in Markdown. So if you don't like it, run the tool again. Or if you just want to manually change something, absolutely. So based on the specs, now we have plan. The plan is technical, because now it says, hey, this is going to be built with Uno platform. I need you to support .NET 10 as the runtime. I need this to run on iOS and Android, Mac OS and Windows, and Linux and WebAssembly, C#, .NET 10 and onwards. Use Kia renderers, use toolkit, material design, MVUX pattern, navigation, DI, logging, all the things. Community toolkit if you need to, SQLite if you need to, testing suite. So all of the technical things are very, very nicely spelled out. And it's, again, checking against those constitutional principles. Like principle 1 is cross-platform. Are we doing it? Yes. Because now we are marrying up the plan, which is inherited from the specs, to say, are we meeting those constitutional guidelines? So yes, it does all of it. And here's the plan of exactly where things should live. It's spelling it out that this is a single Uno platform project. It's shared source code. Here are all the platform folders. Here's how your models should be, your services, your presentation layers. It's spelling it all out. And then we get to tasks, which is again just a guideline of phase one you do this, phase two you do this. So incrementally build up the app. So phase one is essentially just a setup. So make sure you have the tools. .NET New Uno app, that's the template. That's how you start. Make sure you set up those folders for models, services, and presentation, and so on. And then you get to work incrementally building stuff. So that's it. That's all the work up front that you do, right? And then you can just say implement. And with any AI agent, GitHub Copilot, Claude, Cursor, Codex, you name it, they can all get to work with those, well-defined specs and tasks. So here's my app. So ta-da! It's not, not something I have worked for weeks. Just essentially an overnight app, but it kind of shows you the value of these detailed specs. So this is the app that I get, and essentially in here I have exactly what I wanted: my models, my services, my views, my platforms. Everything is right in here. Presentation has all of these different views. So it's a full-on .NET cross-platform app. So this being a Uno platform app, I see all of my targets here that I can run in. So let's go run this really quick. Yep. And it's going to do a build here, net and desktop, hopefully. And out comes an app. So this, again, like in the specs, I said, like, hey, you should make this like a mobile first view. So yes, it runs everywhere, but I kind of wanted it to be a mobile first layout and a view. So it's, it's something I can carry easily on a phone. So I'm going to try to simulate here, even though I can pull up a simulator. This is just the desktop app running on a mobile view. I'm just going to make it slimmer so I can see everything as if I'm looking at it on a mobile. So I still have hot reload and hot design. So if I don't like something in the design, I can jump in and I can change things up. But let's take a look at this app really quick. So it's got the material design here. This is a listing of all the sessions. It's keeping the brand colors a little bit. So if I can go back and look at the brand colors here, it's mostly a little bit of purple and teal, and it's put the material design on it. So it's trying to make it kind of consistent with what I have. So here is the list of sessions, and then I can go look at workshops. Again, similar idea. It's showing me where things are happening, at what time, what room, what's the advanced level of the session or the workshop. And then let's go into my speakers, so I can see a listing of all the speakers. Many of them are my good friends here. So that's nice. I get to see all the speakers and the details, and I can go into each session here. And let's look at one here. If I go into it, it shows me exactly what I wanted, that I should be able to add those sessions in my my schedule. So I have that add button, and I have it in my in my schedule. So now if I go back into my schedule, so that's exactly just the session we just added. But in my session, these are a couple of the sessions that I had said I want to attend. And once I've attended those, I can do a little bit of a feedback for the speaker, tell them what went right or wrong, what they can do better, and so on. So that's super simple, but it this is the base workflow of any conference type app. You need sessions, you need schedules, you need a way to build a schedule for somebody attending, and then I have the other things, like I can look at partners. These are all the people who sponsor. There we are, Uno Platform as a sponsor there, and other folks who showed up to help. And then we have the venue. This was like I said last week, it was in beautiful Toronto, Ohio, Ontario, right by the lake. Sunny couple of days. Here's the venue information and so on. So kind of a full-scale app. It's functional. Yes, it could be looking a little bit more polished and so on, but it's fully functional. And the reason why it is functional and it's not from a single prompt is because of the specs. Because I spent the time upfront to say, this is exactly what I want. I want sessions. I want adding to schedule. I want workshops. I want rating. Now get to work. And everything is spelled out in a plan that says, here's the tech specifications of how to do this. Here's how you validate. And every step of the way, it's using the Uno Platform MCP Tools to actually go, look up things on how to do things in our docs, and then it's validating itself. I had some issues where, over and over again, it was having a hard time trying to add this thing to the schedule because it has to persist. It was caching it. So when I came back to my schedule, it wasn't always showing. So all of this is just a lot of back and forth with the AI agent trying to make sure it does the right thing. And again, like I said, if I don't like something in here in the design, I can always click into hot design. And now my app is still running. What I do get here is a nice design canvas. So I do have an agent here, so I can iterate more. I can do interactive, in which case my app is still running and I can click around. But the most helpful thing is the design. So I can actually choose something, click in, and I can change up properties, and any changes that I make here immediately go back to my IDE in my code. And one click, I'm back to the running app and everything is good. So again, that was my app. Again, I'm not going to sit through and show you the times of how to iterate and build through, but it's a lot of back and forth with Claude, and over you can see like it's executing and it's launching an app. It's checking things with Uno platform, and it's trying to find things, and it's validating whether it is working or not. So over and over again it goes. So the MCP tools are really the secret sauce that make everything work really nicely here. Okay, so let's wrap things up here. So what I'm trying to say is Spec-Kit is actually really nice. This is kind of the glue that should hold things together. This is work we are putting in up front to say, this is what we want built and the how, and let's break it up into features and user stories. From there on, we're going to make things a little bit granular for the AI agent to consume, to say, here is the plan, here's the technical plan of how you build things, here are the features. Now let's go into actual execution mode where you have these phases of implementing that plan. And if you happen to use an open source stack, but with some good AI and design tools like Uno platform, you do have these wonderful MCP tools that are there for the agent and Spec-Kit to use to build up those specs to the T. And then when you go into implementation, you just have that much more confidence in how AI is going to repeatedly validate itself and give you an app or a feature that's kind of to the spec of what you wanted, right? So that's just a quick look at sort of my real world AI assisted development workflow with Spec-Kit and Uno platform. Again, your choice of AI agent doesn't matter. It works with pretty much everything. It's a command line tool, but it's a nice way of able to specify, plan, and then go into implementation so that your AI agents have a little bit more structure and guidance to what they're building. All right, so that's it for me, and can't wait to see what you all build. And thanks a lot for watching. Have fun building. Well, before you build, spec it out with Spec-Kit. All right, so that's it from me, and thanks a lot, and bye.